What time is it, my creatives? That's right, it's photo hacking time, and we're going to be doing wedding photo editing. And what we have here is something you might call double exposure or clipping mask. And so this is what we're going to be creating as the example photo here. So the first thing that you're going to do is create a new document. And we are going to create a 1000 by 1000 pixel document here, just like you would for Instagram. So create new, 1000 by 1000, and press OK. The files that you will need for this project will be linked in the description below. We're going to be recreating this photo as requested by one of the users off of my Facebook groups page. So here we have this photo. We're going to go ahead and take the example photos here. We're going to cut this out using the pen tool because this background is so busy. There's no really other way to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut this background out with the pen tool and then fast forward that particular setting. I also included the PSD file with the item already cut out if you're unfamiliar with how to use the pen tool. If you want to set up the pen tool yourself, grab the pen tool and then check rubber band, so that way the little icon here that I'm clicking at the top, the cog, just select that rubber band mode, and that will make it a lot easier for you to use the pen tool. And then you're just going to roughly select around the edge. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're just trying to get a selection here so we can do a clipping mask, so we can get that double exposure effect for the wedding photo effect that we are trying to achieve with the example file. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and fast forward the video because it's going to take at least 3 to 4 minutes for me to cut this image out. And you can pause the video, feel free to do that, and we will pick up from there once we get back with the next step with this photo editing tutorial. For more tutorials just like these. Now that we've completed our selection with the pen tool, we are now going to use the path selection tool over in the windows and then go to paths. And then there is the little circle marching ants at the very bottom. You want to click that, and that's going to turn your selection into marching ants. And then you're going to press Control C, create a new layer, and press Control V to copy him into a new layer. Then we're going to save this out as a PSD, so that way it's saved. And then you can go ahead and copy and paste that same dude into the file, and you can paste him back in here as well. So that way, if you mess up, you have a saved version of him copied. So we're going to take a look back at the photo to see how it's laid out once again. We're using this as a reference. Of course, we don't have the exact original photos, so we're using photos from unsplash.com. And I found some similar photos here that we can use to create somewhat of a similar effect. So at this point, I'm just saving the photo out, so in case we mess up, we don't have to recut him out all over again. Now you're going to take the background the background here and press Control T and basically minimize the photo until it fits in the background. And you will get this picture in the folder settings, or you can download it directly from Unsplash. You can use any photos that you like, but for this tutorial purposes, we're using the ones from Unsplash. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put a slight Gaussian blur on there and then just press OK. Then we'll go back and check the reference photo and go back to our original photo and make the edits according here. So what I'm doing here is I'm selecting that layer and then I'm going to add a photo filter onto it. It looks like in the original photo that it has some sort of sepia filter. So that is what I'm doing here. Then I go back to the photo and I'm adjusting the color balance here for the photo filter. And that's how you get like a sepia tone, if you ever wondered about that. So here, the next step I'm doing is I am creating a vignette. A vignette is basically, the term for that is just basically kind of like a low opacity, like dark edging around the photo, which can be found in, you know, in like older photo techniques, but it also is used in double exposure to give it that effect. So I'm just taking a small soft round brush and just basically brushing some black over the edges. Now there is a way to do this with a filter, but I prefer doing it this way because I have a lot more control over the way that it looks exactly. And I'm just brushing here. And I'm zooming in so I can get a better look. And now what we're going to do is we're going to clean up the photo. So if you double click on the smart layer, it will bring you to a new layer where you can just go ahead and edit that. And once you edit this photo, you save it and it will go inside the smart object into the original file. I know that's confusing, but just make sure you watch the video closely so you can see what I'm doing. What I'm doing here is I'm just erasing these hard edges that I use the pen tool and I cut out loosely, because I've noticed that, you know, like in the face or whatever, when you do the pen tool, it creates such hard edges. And so around the face, I like to leave that out. And I know I probably should use a layer mask, but because I don't want this part of the photo back, I'm doing a hard edit. And I mean, in not every case a layer mask is appropriate, but I digress. So here I am going to be just deleting or basically erasing at this point, and it's going to take me a few minutes to do this. You can follow along. I'm going to be quiet during this period. You can enjoy the music while I go ahead and edit this whole entire area. Here I zoom in and I see that not everything has been edited, so I'll go back to my layer mask, not my layer mask, my smart object, and I will go back in and I will edit some of the things that are still, you know, missing, well, are still there that should be missing, you know what I mean? To make the photo look a little bit better, get rid of some of these issues here. And as you can see, even though I try to erase it, it's not working out well, so I am using the pen tool once again. The pen tool is your friend, okay? I'm just letting you know that. Well, here I'm checking the photo and I'm noticing that the mouth area needs some work, so I'm going back in the nose area and the mouth area to repair these issues. You can do this till your heart's desired. Like I said, this is going to be a double exposure clipping mask. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're putting a photo inside a photo. So the photo that's inside the photo is actually the focal point. So this cut does not have to be perfect because we're actually going to blur his face in the end a little bit, just like the original photo, to just kind of make the focal point inside the jacket area. We're going to do the double exposure inside there. Now you can rasterize the layer because we don't need it as a smart object anymore. And then you're going to go to adjustments and curves, and we're going to do some more adjustment as far as the lighting goes before we place that image, so we can get the lighting a little bit more in tune with the background. And as you can see here, I'm just adjusting the lighting. Now I'm going back into the photo to take a look at the reference photo to see how it is placed. As you can see, it's looking very aesthetic. It's looking pretty original. So I'm dragging him up above the photo filter layer because I didn't want him affected. And then I'm dragging the photo filter layer on top of that photo to give it that sepia look that's in the original photo. And so that looks really, really good. I actually like that achieved effect. So now I'm going to go to adjustments, color balance, and then I'm going to do some final adjustments to the color to make those two, the background and the dude, blend together a little bit better. And then I press OK. Now I'm going back in, and as you can see, I've got the vignette, the background, and him all placed together looking in sync. And then I'm taking a look once more at the reference photo, checking it out to see how I'm going to visualize this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to basically select a color here and add some lighting. Lighting to the photo per se. And I am going to basically add more lighting, and then I am going to erase out some of the lighting in the middle of his back, because that is where we're going to place the image there. First, we're going to blur this with a Gaussian blur, so to kind of give it more of a kind of lighting bokeh effect. And then we're going to put a blend mode on it, and then lower the opacity. And that looks about right. So what I'm doing here is I'm just deleting the background of, well, not the background, but parts of the back, because that's where we're going to be placing the clipping mask, aka double exposure, the photo inside the photo. And I just have like a very soft eraser, and then I place the opacity and the flow down to a very low setting, and I'm just leaving the edges but just erasing in the middle, so that way we have that dimensional effect going on, so the photo doesn't look very flat. And I would say the original photo, that it looks kind of flat. They didn't do a very good job of blending or making it look 3D. So I felt like I did a much better job. And notice how I have that like dreamy effect going on. So like when you take wedding photos or something like that, it looks more like a memory. I like to make my photos like that because it literally is a memory. It's like you're preserving your memories. So that's why I like to create that in that dreamy, hazy effect when I do the double exposure or clipping mask photo effect. And here what I'm doing is I lowered the opacity so I could see where I'm placing the picture. And then I press Control T, and then I just click on the little coggles at the corner that look like little teeny square dots. And I'm just pulling them up and down to resize the photo. And so I could place it inside his jacket. And then I am kind of giving it an angle to give it a little bit more fun perspective look. Almost as if like she's running from the sideways in there. And I just think that this gives it a lot more, I don't know, it gives it a lot more character if you ask me, instead of just like a straight photo in there. And see how much better that looks? It looks pretty cool like that. And you could see the forest and a lot more is going on, whereas that one is just like right in smack in the middle. It doesn't look interesting to me, the original photo. So here's another trick you can do if you don't have enough room to fill that area. Of course, we're going to delete the head, but I just wanted to show you that you can use the clone stamp tool to stamp and make the photo fit areas where they wouldn't otherwise fit. So now you're going to press Control T on the Control click into the layer, and then go to create clipping mask. And then that's going to create a clipping mask of your photo there. And I'm just taking a look at the reference photo once again. And now we're going to add a blend mode because it looks kind of flat like that. So to add a blend mode, there's a few different ones. You can use screen, color dodge. There's a few that you can use, but you could pick the ones that you're comfortable with. And at first I liked this one, but then I didn't. So I will sometimes flip between the blend modes a few times. Sometimes I change my mind about things. And so I don't think that I quite like that blend mode, so I'm going back in and I'm changing it. And I'm like, something's not quite right about this blend mode. And of course, we're going to go back in and we're going to change her dress and the colors in this area to match like what I'm doing now. I'm putting a photo filter, a sepia photo filter, to match up how she looks with the other photos to make it more cohesive. And then I'm also doing a color balance to fix things. But it's not really fixed, so I'm going to go back to the blend modes in a minute because I didn't like the way that it turned out. And I'm probably going to pick lighten because it's a little bit better. But right now I'm changing the vibrance and saturation for this particular picture. As you can see, I'm going, yep, I went back into the blend modes once again. And it'll take me a few seconds to figure out which one I want. Sometimes with Photoshop, it can be really decisive on what you want to use. Probably going to change that again because that is not a good blend mode. And sometimes it takes a little while to decide what you want to do, like per se, as far as like exactly what exactly you're trying to achieve with this kind of look. So what I'm doing is I chose to keep the blend mode the way it is so I could see what I'm doing. I'm actually creating a vignette over a vignette. So it's a vignette inside his jacket over this photo, because when I looked in the reference photo, I noticed that it also had an like a inner vignette. So there's an outer vignette in the background layer, and then an inner vignette like where the second photo is. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm just taking a soft edge like black brush to make that vignette. And then I'm going to put a blend mode on that as well. And then we're going to clean up the photo. We're going to erase a lot of the photo off of his face. So right now I am doing a blend mode of the vignette there. And then we're going to delete the image off of his face because we're done with that part, and our reference photo doesn't have any of the clipping mask on his face, so we're not doing it in this one. Although I know a lot of people like to do that. And so here I am actually changing the blend mode on that as well for the lighting. Then I'm going back to the clipping mask, and I am creating a layer to put over this, and I'm also going to create a lighter color. Remember what I said about placing light in between the photos to give it a three-dimensional look, and then I'm going to place a blend mode on it. And so this kind of creates some perspective when you put light in between the photo that you cut out and the background. And notice how I just created like almost like 5 feet of perspective there. It's an illusion. It's all an illusion. You have to understand that when you're creating these things, you have to think in terms of how do I achieve this illusion or this perspective? And that's what you always have to be doing. Now, at this point, I realized that part of the background is showing from the couple. So what I went in and I basically selected it all, and I selected the couple and I did an edit content aware fill to get rid of them in the background, because if you can see at the corner right by his chin, part of the blue part was showing out. Now what I decided to do is I decided to add a firefly overlay to this image because there's fireflies inside the double exposure. She's basically in a forest with fireflies. So I wanted to add some more lighting and effect, and as you can see in the background, there's a few photos going on. And then I added a blend mode so you can see some of those bokehs peeking through. And then I added another layer. I merged all the layers together, and I did that by pressing Control-Shift-Alt-E to create an image from all my layers. And then I added another firefly picture on top of that one, and then placed a blend mode as well to give it a really cool effect. And so now you can see the grass, you can see the fireflies, but I also think that there's too many fireflies, so I'm going to go back in and clean that up by erasing, and then I'm going to place a little bit of a blur on that photo, because when you do the blend modes and you erase stuff, it shows this like weird haze. So if you blur it, you won't be able to see that anymore, but I think that looks pretty cool, as you know, as far as like what I've done so far. But I wanted to make sure that there was nothing on his head, completely nothing, because reference photo didn't have that. So now I'm blurring it. You're just gonna do either a box blur or a Gaussian blur, it doesn't matter. And then press OK. I am only doing 1%. You don't need a really large blur, just very tiny blur. Barely, like a barely there blur. And so now I'm coming back in and I am going to use the blur tool to blur some of the items in here. I'm creating a new layer from there. And also Control Shift Alt E to create a copy of all of our layers into a new image. And now I'm going to blur the edges to kind of give it like a kind of like a bokeh effect, like when you take a picture like from like far away, some of the image that it's farther away is blurred, so I'm blurring one side more than the other to kind of give it that effect, because we do have bokehs in the background. And that's pretty much all I'm doing, and also blurring the hair because the way that we cut it out was kind of ghetto. So I'm trying to basically create the illusion of the fact that that part of the photo was taken at a blurred angle instead of a really bad Photoshop cut. You gotta fake it till you make it. No, I'm just saying, like, sometimes, like, there are things, like, it's the same thing, like, when I'm drawing sometimes and I can't draw hands, sometimes I will draw them hidden to give it the illusion that I can draw well. But if I were to leave that photo with the hands and I just can't freaking draw hands to save my life, you know, there's just some shortcuts and things that you can do to basically hack or make it look like you know what you're doing. Now, right now, what I'm doing is I am giving it more dimension by adding some photo filters and cleaning up, burning and dodging and blurring. As you can see, the more and more I do this, the more he looks like he's part of that photo instead of just pasted on there. And that is basically how you get that effect. And then I'm doing some more curves adjustments, and this is adjusting the whole entire photo versus just part of the photo. And you can also take a peek from the preview button. You can uncheck that and check that on and off so you can see if it looks better than the original or if you should have just left it the way it was. Sometimes you can create too many edits, or you might just be burnt out and your design eye is turned off. And sometimes it helps to take a break and then come back and look at it with fresh eyes. Because I know for myself, even though I'm a really good designer, sometimes I call it my third eye, which is my design eye, when you're like in that design mode. And I'm like, my third eye is gone because I can't freaking design anything right now. Like, everything looks like shit. And it's because you're not in your right brain. And see, what us creatives, when we get creative and we're able to visualize and do all these creative things, it's because we're in another world. We're in a different part of our brain. Creative people have the ability to basically, like, take their mind to another level, you know. So that's, you know, non-creative people can't do that. I mean, they could try, but it's going to be really hard for them. So here I'm just doing some more color grading and editing and more vignette and just cleaning this up and looking at the reference photo to try to, like, match it up, so to speak. And it's a little dark, so I'm going to lighten that up. I'm going to put a blend mode on it, of course. But I'm trying to give it that fisheye lens look. That's the kind of like what I'm going for. And this is all pretty simple. You just are brushing on a very light opacity of black and then putting a blend mode on it. It's not that difficult. A vignette is probably the easiest thing that you could ever make. And then I'm looking at the reference photo, looking back at it, and checking it out. So that's basically the gist of this tutorial. I hope you guys like this, and thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.